A little bit of panic. I mean, let's be honest. There's some issues, and it's, frustrating. You know how Jerry Jones is as an owner. He's hands-on, and he believes he's put together a championship-level team, and he probably has, absent the injuries, but that's the reality of the situation. And he's not a guy who's going to stand still, so it's not surprising. Collins was eventually going to move in to that guard spot, so that's not that big of a deal. But the running back issue, I mean, that's a concern because we talked about it yesterday at the Golden Nugget. As big as a disappointment DeMarco Murray's been here in Philadelphia, bottom line is they haven't replaced him in Dallas. And despite having the best run-blocking offensive line in football, with Collins or without him, the Cowboys haven't been able to run the football.
So they bring in Christine Michael from a trade from the Seattle Seahawks. I know a lot of people like this guy. He's been, touted as this big, talented guy. He kind of reminds me of like Bryce Brown when he was here. Here's this guy with size and speed, and he just didn't seem to be able to do it here or Buffalo. Do you think Michael gives them a jolt to their run game? What do you hear about Christine Michael?
Well, he is very talented, and he does have tremendous size. So he's more like DeMarco Murray as far as, his ability to move the pile, at least the DeMarco Murray of last year that ran for 1,800 yards. So I think they want more size and they want more physicality. But, he's been injury-prone. It's very early in his career. Didn't get on the field much in Seattle. But yeah, going back to college, he was a talented kid, and a lot of people had high hopes for him. So your Bryce Brown comparison, he's probably not going to want to hear that. But as far as talent, that's a good one because he can run with the football. But there are other things, and we kind of talked about him with Ryan Matthews. You have to be able to stay on the field. You have to have the durability. You have to be able to hang on to the football. And those are all of the questions that need to be answered, but obviously Dallas is in a bit of a panic mode.
Yeah, they got the bye this week, and, of course, they're going to make a change at quarterback. It'll be Castle in there. Yesterday we did a lot of comparing Bradford to guys. Bradford, Castle, or Whedon. You got to feel pretty good, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take Sam over too many, but I would take him over those two. There's no question about that. Yeah, and that's the reason the Cowboys are behind the eight ball. It's difficult when you lose a player like Tony Romo. As much as people in Philadelphia like to criticize him, that is a darn good quarterback. And if he goes down and he's injured, it's tough to overcome that. And you're seeing it happen in Dallas, and we've seen it happen with other teams in other years. It's just there is a dearth of quarterbacks in this league. Nobody has depth at that position, and the Cowboys are no different.
John McMullen's with us, 97.3 ESPN.com. In the top trending bar, click on McMullen on the Eagles, and we'll get into that Eagles stuff in just a second. We got the Patriots this weekend, John, of course, who also writes nationally for today's Pigskin.com. We got the Patriots and the Colts this weekend. Now, this has always been a big rivalry game, but this is also the matchup that started the Deflategate. Last week we had the Patriots take it to the Cowboys. Is there a little extra incentive in this game on Sunday?
Well, the Patriots would say no, but they certainly think, Ryan Grigson was the guy who set off Deflategate, former Eagles personnel guy, the Colts GM. And there's no doubt that there's no love lost between those two organizations. When you talk about not only Deflategate, but everything else the Patriots get involved in, you saw those stories about how the Colts sweep their locker room for bugs when they go in Gillette Stadium. They believe the Patriots are as underhanded as it gets, and I've often said, the Colts have to stop treating Bill Belichick like he's Dr. Evil and believe they belong on the field with him and just try to out-prepare him and beat him. And I don't think that's going to happen.
All right, John, we got Eagles-Giants, a lot surrounding this game. Obviously, it's not a make-or-break game for either team. Winner or loser is still going to be in this race. But what is the one thing that the winner, obviously, if it's New York, it's a big spot for them because they would put themselves, they would put the Eagles at 0-3 in the division. So is this a bigger game for New York to win, meaning that they could really put a nail in the division race for Philadelphia, or is this a bigger game for Philadelphia?
I think it's a bigger game for Philadelphia because it's a home game, number one, and you have to hold serve at home, and they've already lost some division contests. So this would be a nail in the coffin, and obviously if you win it, you're tied for first place after that disastrous start. And obviously the Giants, can then do the home and home thing. So just human nature says they have that to rely on. And the Eagles, have to hold serve and have to win a potential home game. There's no question about it, because we assume this division's only going to have one playoff team, and I think that's a good assumption. So it's going to come down to who beats who in the division. So all of these division games are important, and when you have one at home, you better win it.
Yeah, and obviously, as you just mentioned, if the Giants win this game, that puts them at 4 wins. Philadelphia would be 2-4, but they would be 0-3 in the division. This is I think, a much bigger game for Philadelphia at this stage. But does it have, that feel of the loser of this game is out? I mean, that's not. We're a little early to be saying that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's more likely the Eagles would be in the far deeper hole, obviously. But even that, I don't think they'd be out of it. I think they'd be on life support. But because the division is so poor, who knows? They could run off a stretch of games and get right back in it. But, yeah, it's a concern. If you go 0-3 in the division, it's going to be tough in any tiebreaker scenario. So, it starts now for the Eagles. They have to start winning these games in the NFC East.
No doubt. John, let me ask you this question. I asked our listeners at the top of the show. We got a lot of feedback on this from the callers and stuff. Which team still has a higher ceiling, New York or Philadelphia?
Philadelphia. New York, we talked about it yesterday. I'm impressed by what they've done. I think they've overachieved to this point. I think Eli Manning's playing at a high level, and we'll see if Odell Beckham's healthy enough this week, if Ruben Randall's healthy enough, if Victor Cruz can get back on the field at some point. That's going to help their passing game, obviously. But there's just not a lot of talent on that team in other positions, particularly on the defense without Jason Pierre-Paul. That secondary at the safety position, more than anything else, is a disaster. The linebackers, John Beeson seems to get injured every other game, and he's their only really solid NFL-level linebacker. And the offensive line's overachieved. So, this Giants team deserves a ton of credit for being in first place, but I don't think there's a very high ceiling for that team.
John McMullen with us here talking Eagles as we do every day at this time. More on the Eagles from John at 97.3 ESPN.com. And he's got a really nice piece up right now on Fletcher Cox, who obviously was just named the Defensive Player of the Week for the NFC. We talked a lot about him yesterday and really what kind of player he could be in the 3-4, in the 4-3. And he's kind of evolving into that Pro Bowl, maybe even more type of player. And we talked about yesterday whether or not he's the kind of guy another team has to game plan for. But how about in this specific game, the matchup between Cox and Logan against this New York Giant offensive line?
Well, before the season, I would have said it would be a huge advantage for the Eagles, but that Giants offensive line has been better than everybody has expected, and they have some young guys who are playing well. Eric Flowers was obviously a number 1 pick, and he's hit the ground running. Weston Richburg was a second-round pick. He's starting to come on. Jeff Schwartz is one of their veterans. He's playing better. This group has been much, much better than anyone expected. Before the season, I would have told you this was one of the 5 worst offensive lines in the league after Will Beatty went down with an injury. So it's been anything but. It's probably been one of the 10 best. So it's almost the antithesis of what happened to the Eagles, because you expected Philadelphia with Peters and Kelsey and Johnson, even with the new guards, you expected that offensive line to at least be in the top half of the league. For the first 4 games, it was in the bottom 10. They finally got it going a little bit. so it's interesting because you'll see, is this, things starting to turn where they were supposed to be and the talented guys are coming to the top, or just the Giants' offensive line, is that just better than we all expected?
Yeah, and then you flip it over. The Eagles have struggled, but if they're going to do something this week, pass blocking, this is a good team, they don't rush the passer very well. We talked a lot about Bradford in the second halves of games. This might be a week where he's going to have a lot of time early on in this game to get in a rhythm.
Oh, he's going to have time to throw. They can't rush the passer at all. And even when the Eagles were playing poorly as an offensive line, it was as a run-blocking group. They were always pretty good as pass blockers. That hasn't changed. So I don't expect the Giants to get anywhere near Sam Bradford. He's going to be comfortable in the pocket, and it's going to be up to him to make throws. Sometimes he does, and sometimes he doesn't. And that's the definition of a mediocre quarterback. He's inconsistent. So hopefully he can put together two halves. We haven't seen it yet, but he'll have a good chance because this is as easy as it gets as far as being in the pocket in the NFL. Because without JPP, the Giants have gotten nowhere near the quarterback.
Yeah, and they're not great in the secondary either, so guys should be open.
Yeah, their corners are pretty good, but their safeties are really bad. So, and that's the strength of the Eagles is the seam stuff and the inside throws to Jordan Matthews, Zach Ertz, Darren Sproles. So it plays into the strength of Philadelphia. The corners, DRC, which people in Philadelphia know well, is still pretty good. Amuka Moore is pretty good. And just like every other team, the Eagles receivers are going to have a difficult time getting open. But those inside routes, they should be there all day, all night in this case.
Coordinators spoke today, and obviously one of the things that Billy Davis highlighted right at the stop of the press conference was the third and long issue, and it seems like that is something that has plagued this team for the last couple of years. If they can get that thing figured out, this is going to be a pretty good defense. It seems like first and second down, they're pretty good, but still having problems on third down, John.
Yeah, and that's been some of the corner issues, and that's been the one bugaboo of this group. And Maxwell played his best game as an Eagle, so hopefully he's starting to get things and starting to settle down because everybody else has really handled their business. Certainly the defensive line. There's been some injuries, but guys are getting back healthy. The safeties have been tremendous. Both Jenkins and Thurman have been great. And Jordan Hicks, we keep talking about him. It's amazing the production he's putting up. If you would have told me Kiko Alonso and Michael Kendricks were both not playing, I would have told you that would be a disaster. And it's been anything but because Jordan Hicks has been not only serviceable, he's been darn good.
Yeah, he has been, and they were asked a question about the linebackers early in the week. I guess he said, hey, we'll worry about that later, but no Kiko. What's the thought on on Kendricks this week? Are they kind of just not really worrying about him now because of Hicks? I mean, would this be a situation if Hicks was playing poorly that maybe Kendricks would be trying to rush him back?
Yeah, probably. He didn't practice again today, so, it's still early. Obviously, you have one more day, so
yep.
It's not that important that he wasn't out there today, but you get the feeling that nobody's going to hurry and push him back because he's already aggravated the injury once, and the guy playing for him has played better than he was playing before he went out with the injury. So there's no real rush to get him back. If at some point Hicks really descends and starts looking like a rookie, I think you'll see that push start, with greater alacrity. But right now you don't need it, and you could let him rest and try to get that thing calmed down because, as we all know, hamstring issues linger, and we've already seen it with Kendricks. He tried to come back once, and he couldn't.
Yeah, and he had the same problem last year, and I guess that was the speculation as to why the Eagles were looking to make a change or upgrade at that position. Because he has not proven he can stay on the field, Michael Kendrick. So he seems like a guy that you really can't put a lot of trust in.
No, and you're right. That's why everyone assumed when the Eagles made the trade and brought Kiko Alonso in that they were just going to let Michael Kendricks play out of his contract. Some thought they might even trade him before the season. So it was a bit of a surprise they extended him. And the main issue with Chip Kelly and Michael Kendricks has always been you can't trust him from week to week to be on the football field, and durability is part of it. But they bit the bullet and signed him, and unfortunately, the injury bug has bit him again, and that has to be a concern moving forward.
John, today Billy Davis was asked about Byron Maxwell, how he's seen him come along. What are some of the differences now compared to week one? And a lot of people think that it's kind of square peg round hole with him in terms of his coverage skills in this offense and this defense. But what did Billy Davis say about where Maxwell is now, 5 weeks into the season, training camp, preseason, and everything?
Well, he's improving. He played his best game. It is a bit of he is more of a zone corner, and the Eagles play a lot of man-to-man and like to play single high safety. So that's an issue. But I've been preaching since week one he was going to get better because Julio Jones wasn't going to be out there every week, and he's not.
Well, he's not getting burned like he was then, but it still seems on third downs the guy making the tackle's 31.
Well, you're right. I mean, he hasn't played great. He did play well against New Orleans, but we can argue that that's the competition level too.
But even when New Orleans was getting those third down conversions, it seemed like they were getting them on Maxwell.
Well, there's no doubt he's not Darrelle Revis. There's no quarterback in this league concerned with throwing at him or throwing the football in his direction.
Right.
And when you pay a guy $63 million, you would hope that a quarterback, an opposition quarterback, might say, maybe I won't throw it at that guy. So certainly that part of it's a disappointment because no one has any concern throwing the football at Byron Maxwell. But I preached early on, I said he was going to be an upgrade over what was here last season. I think eventually he will prove to be that. But he's never going to be a shutdown corner, and people expecting that are going to be disappointed.
Yeah, well, and obviously Maxwell, Odell Beckham, we don't know what his status is going to be, but, that could be, you get a guy like Maxwell to defend a Dez Bryant, an Odell Beckham, a Deshaun Jackson. There's a lot of really talented big play receivers in this division. You wonder what Billy Davis will throw at the Giants and Odell Beckham if he is even able to go. I guess that's still up in the air.
Yeah, same thing as Michael Kendricks. He hurt his hamstring again. He's had a history of hamstring. He missed the first month of his rookie season with hamstring injuries. He missed a lot of the preseason with hamstring issues, and he got injured against San Francisco, had to leave the game with a hamstring. Came back very late and served mainly as a decoy. He did make one catch. But this is a guy who has been a chronic issue. As talented as he is, this hamstring, it looks like it's going to be an issue for him moving forward, and that's a concern because he's dominant. And when he's going on all cylinders, I got news for you. Byron Maxwell's not stopping.
No, and not many other guys either. He's been pretty good, and obviously he's a big reason why Eli has been more consistent. It's funny, Eli's a 59% career completion percentage. You got Odell Beckham for a full season. That's up to about 65% now. It's funny how a good receiver makes guys' completion percentage go up.
Yeah, that's part of it. Also, though, a lot of it is Ben McAdoo, and they have totally shifted their offensive philosophy. Before he got there as offensive coordinator, they were just a vertical team. They wanted to push the football down the field, and obviously if you're trying to get the football down the field, your completion percentage is going to go down. Now there's a lot of West Coast stuff in, a lot of dump offs, a lot of underneath stuff, and your completion percentage is going to go up. It's just the way it works. But, that's nothing to take away from OBJ because you can make a strong argument he might have been the second or third best receiver in all of football as a rookie last season.
John, today Pat Shurmur was asked about Sproles not being a big part of the passing game, and he seemed to say that there was circumstances and, that teams, they're doubling him a little bit more when he comes out there. You would think that should open some things up for other guys, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, it's always circumstances with this coaching staff. No matter what you ask them, no matter how you ask them, it's always how the defense is playing. And that's what they were going to rely on. He was also asked about they use more two tight end sets, which we talked about and said they should do. And Shurmur said it was circumstance. It was the way the defense was playing us. At some point, and you say this all the time, and I agree with you, at some point you have to dictate. I don't care what the defense is doing to you. Really good teams dictate what they want to do. And Darren Sproles is one of your best players. In third down situations, you have to get him involved. Now, he's had more drops than he normally does, and that you have to put on his shoulders. But the strength of this team, as we talked about, is the inside stuff, and that's where you have to get Matthews and Ertz and Sproles involved. Those are the matchups on this football team that are difficult to defend.
Yeah, John, and last one for you. You know, the Eagles have dominated in recent years. I think it's 11 out of 14, twice last year, shut them out. Something that Andy Reid, I don't think, had a shutout in his whole tenure as the Philadelphia Eagles coach. They shut him out 27-0. They had 8 sacks in that game. They beat him in the final week of the season. As I said, 11 out of 14. They've dominated this season. Do you think Philadelphia matches up well with this Giants team?
I do. I do, and that we go all the way back to what I originally said. I don't think this Giants team has a tremendously high ceiling. I don't think they've rebuilt the talent enough to be a real dominant team. And I think Philadelphia, as we mentioned, those inside guys match up really well against the Giants safeties. And New York doesn't have a pass rush on defense. So Sam Bradford has looked very uncomfortable at times when people are around his feet and sort of, threatening to hit his knees. He's not going to have to worry about that, at least as much as you possibly could in an NFL football game, because they can't get near anyone. So this, to me, on paper, is a great matchup for the Eagles. Now we'll see. As Chip Kelly would say, we'll see if they can execute.
All right, for more on the game, go to 97.3 ESPN's piece up right now on Fletcher Cox. And, of course, we'll have more on the Eagles and the Giants all week long at 97.3 ESPN.com. And tomorrow on the Sports Bash, we'll talk to John, look at the first real practice of the week as the Eagles really just getting loosened up today. And then, of course, the Monday night game. We'll have plenty more on that. All right, John, take care, pal.
Hey, thanks, Mike.